Hey, welcome in.
Welcome to the Arrowhead Addict podcast.
We are here coming to you live.
The Kansas City Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl. You only win a Super Bowl 2 times every 5 years, right? Oh! The warm-up act is over. Let's bring in Melissa Etheridge, massive Chiefs fan. Melissa.
Super Bowl champion, 2-time Pro Bowler, and Trent Green. Trent Green, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
And he picked it up! He picked it up! He's gonna score! And we'll see you next week, but until then, as always, go Chiefs.
Welcome. This is a special Christmas edition of Wacky Wednesday here on the Arrowhead Addict channel. I'm Adam Best, here with the golden voice of Sterling Holmes and our amazing producer, Richard, doing his thing behind the scenes. How you doing, Sterling?
I'm good, man. I played 18 holes of golf today. It was great. Winter golf, phenomenal. Played decent. Didn't lose any money. Good. Things are good.
What's the weather like there in KC?
It was about 52, pretty windy, partly cloudy, but not too bad, man. It was not too bad at all.
It sounds totally manageable to me. I'm not much of a golfer, but you gotta love when the elements cooperate. So we've got a festive show planned for you guys today. We're gonna get right into it because it could kind of be sort of a long one. I'm not sure how this is gonna go. Christmas time, I know in my house we have an advent calendar. My wife loves kind of counting down the days, or up the days, I guess, from 1 to 25, and she has these little calendars where you open it and there's a little chocolate inside, but you don't know what's going to be in there. It's a mystery and it's a lot of fun. And I thought, well, why don't we do that with the Chiefs roster?
I love
rankings.
it.
Yeah.
I love this.
And everything's going to be a surprise. It's kind of going to be a reverse from 25 to 1 instead of 1 to 25. And eventually the last one will be Christmas. Number 2 will be Christmas Eve. We'll see who gets those honors. And then 25 is not to make anyone feel bad, but they're kind of the least valuable contributor this season. I'm going to rattle this list off. I've prepared some stats to kind of back up where I've placed these guys. Sterling is going to chip in with his points and counterpoints. He always has them. They're always good. We like to mix it up and sometimes argue. Hopefully we won't agree too much. Occasionally that happens.
It's a holiday spirit, man. I'm not going to get into you too much.
True. Well, we've got 4 guys who I'm considering basically incomplete. If you think of this as a report card, Brian Cook, the injury took him kind of off the board. FAU, we just have not seen enough of FAU. Wanye Morris looks good so far, but kind of just getting started at left tackle. And then Shamari Connor, who also looks incredible. Really, it seems like a hell of a find by Brett Veach, another diamond in the rough defensive back, if you will. But I don't think he's played enough to give him a formal ranking here. So let's just jump in with the Arrowhead Addict Advent Calendar. That's a bit of a tongue twister there. At 25, and this is a tie, I don't think it's going to surprise anybody. It is wide receivers, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Sky Moore, and Kadarius Toney. EPA per target. Sky Moore is 7th worst among all receivers. Kadarius Toney, 19th worst. And then MVS has the 5th lowest target rate in the league. I mean, he's the king of the cardio club. What else can we say? Do you agree with this group kind of bringing up the rear?
Hey, by the way, I'm assuming that we're not doing backups, right? Because there's a couple of glaring omissions on the 25.
These are mainly guys that really play.
Okay. That answers my question, because if this is going to be the bottom, then yes. With those 3 guys, it's not 1, not 2, but 3 scoops of ass. That's what you're getting in your stocking. Open up, pal. They're brutal. They've been horrendous this season. I've been very high on Sky. I was very wrong. Kadarius Toney, I think everyone was wrong on. Whether the Chiefs actually believed he was a wide receiver 1, if that was just pandering to the fan base, either way, he's not even a wide receiver 2 nor 3. He's been atrocious. And then MVS has regressed. It's crazy, man. Like, MVS has never been the guy. He's never been a dude, but he's always been solid enough, right? You always knew for how inconsistent he has been. He's a consistent inconsistent, right? End of the season, you look up, 650 yards, a few great games here and there. This year, it's been nothing of the sort. So yes, sorry, coal in their stockings.
Yeah, it's deserved. You hate to go there, but the three of them combined have less yards on the season than rookie Rashee Rice, who had to really very slowly win over his head coach. More on him later. Let's move on to number 24. That is defensive tackle Derek Nottie. It's just easy to see that he's a diminished player from what he once was. He's a sieve out there. I feel like he's one of the worst run-stopping defensive tackles in the league at this point, which is sad because he has one of the longest tenures on this roster. And in the past, he's been a dependable player. I think you're on mute.
The regression of a couple guys, and we're seeing it with Derek Nottie, right? He's a guy who his first couple years, you thought, okay, solid dude. And then all of a sudden, last year was brutal. And then this year, he started off strong. We thought, okay, maybe he's back, but he's really tapered off. They're trying anything. Mike Pennell is now starting to get snaps alongside Chris Jones. Derek Nottie is clearly not the answer.
There's not much more to say here. I feel for him. That's got to be hard, taking on double teams and just being there in the trenches and absorbing all that contact. But hey, that's what you get paid for, man. Number 23, cornerbacks Jalen Watson and Joshua Williams. This is another tie. They're kind of in the same boat here. It's not a major sophomore slump, but I think they're playing a step down from last season, which isn't that surprising. I mean, both those guys for rookies played out of their freaking minds last year, and they've been fine, especially considering they are CB3 and CB4. Just don't think they've been as good.
What is interesting with those two guys specifically is you mentioned a little bit of a sophomore slump. I don't think they've been bad, but I don't think they've been good. They've been fine. They've been serviceable. And in the grand scheme of things, that's all you want when you have a 7th rounder in Jalen Watson and a 4th rounder in Joshua Williams. I guess for me personally, I thought Williams, you might see a little bit of a nice progression, right? He was going to be a little bit of a toolsier cornerback. We haven't quite seen that this year, but the Chiefs, quite frankly, haven't needed him to be that type of guy. Hopefully L'Jarius Sneed stays here forever, so we're not going to put that into existence. But whatever happens post, if he's not here, that's going to boost Joshua Williams or one of these guys into a more major role. Are they up for that? Because they're good and serviceable in a limited action type of situation, but full-time, I might have my concerns.
Yeah, on a positive note, they're not very noticeable out there, right? They're not making huge mistakes. They're not making huge game-altering turnovers. Jalen Watson, I understand the regression. He's kind of an intangibles, smart, technique sound player. And it just was obvious that he probably was going to take a minor step back because he was just playing out of his mind. As I said, with Joshua Williams, it's a tad bit disappointing because he was drafted higher. And like you said, the tools, he is a big, fast, rangy corner who you would hope could develop into kind of one of these guys like Charvarius Ward on the boundary. Just hasn't manifested as of yet, but there is still time.
Yeah, Charvarius Ward was actually my comp for him. That was a very astute observation there, Bess. I think a lot of the intangibles, the tangibles, kind of smaller schools, if you will, the bigger bodied, maybe doesn't get your head turned as much as you'd like, maybe not quite the ball skills, but the ability to stick with bigger bodied guys, I think was there.
Let's move on to number 22, and that is linebacker Willie Gay. This is a hard one, but he makes flash plays. He's solid against the run. He's a little bit of a liability in pass coverage, if we're being honest. 104.3 passer rating allowed, and PFF isn't everything, but their coverage grade of him is 44.8. It's pretty bad. And I think the thing about Willie is when he makes mistakes, as opposed to those last two guys, you do kind of see it. He reminds me a lot of Devin White in Tampa, where he is such a great athlete that sometimes you notice these spectacular plays, but down in, down out, he's kind of wildly inconsistent.
Yeah. This is the first one where I have more of an issue with. I think he should be higher, lower. I think 22 is a little too low for him. I'd probably have more like 17 or 18. Nothing drastic, but I think Willie Gay Jr. has been a little bit better. I think he started off very strong, right? The contract year, undefeated. He started off really strong. I was like, man, Chiefs are not going to be able to afford to keep Willie Gay Jr. He has tapered off in recent weeks. Some of that does come from the fact that he's had to play a lot more with Drew Tranquill out and then also with Nick Bolton out, right? He's been thrust into that. I think he's still a very good player, but this recent stretch where he's had to be the guy might be too much for him. He might be more of that rotational, the third linebacker on a team, right? Especially a team like Kansas City doesn't play a lot of base 4-3. That's my only concern I would have. I guess I think 22 is a little too low for him.
It's a tough exercise. Someone has to be at 22. And I think one of the interesting things about him and someone who's coming up a few spots later, I'll surely get in trouble for that one as well, is that when Brian Cook and Nick Bolton and Drew Tranquill, for that matter, went out, I feel like our linebacker room and safety room have been getting picked on. You see a lot of tight end passes, a lot of running back dump offs. I mean, you think about Hunter Henry last week, you think about James Cook in the Buffalo game, and on and on and on. I think that's the root of the problem.
100% agree. You've seen it with Green Bay. You saw with Hunter Henry. They've attacked the middle of the field. I love Angry Drunken German says, why does Sterling look like an inmate when he shaves? Yeah, apparently I look better with a mustache. I don't know. I was trying to look good for the holiday season, but apparently I look atrocious. Casey DC says Eminem. I like that too. I was golfing, okay? It's cold outside. I had to rock the beanie. Shout out Crown City Clothing.
You know, a beanie, and it's orange. Orange makes people think of prison jumpsuits. Maybe that's what it is.
It's burnt orange, one of my favorite colors.
Fun
fact for you, burnt orange, one of my favorite colors, yeah.
Hook'em horns, you know, Jamal Charles, Derek Johnson, great history of Longhorns for the
No, take this guy. Come on now. Don't be doing that now. Don't be bringing up Texas now.
I spent 15 years in Austin, so I've got a little bit of a soft spot for those guys, and they've given us some great players. Priest Holmes, we didn't even mention Priest Holmes. So the Longhorn to Chief pipeline is alive and well. Let's move on to number 21, wide receiver Justin Watson. I think you got to give this guy credit because he is, I think it would be generous to call him a wide receiver 3 type. He's more of a wide receiver 4-ish, masquerading as a wide receiver 2 out of necessity, because Mahomes just flat out does not trust Tony, Sky Moore, or MVS. And he does trust Justin Watson a little bit. Now, Watson has occasionally let him down, but not nearly as much as those other guys.
Yeah. It's funny, a guy who I think everyone wanted released, cut before the season started is now saying, wow, Justin Watson might be the second most reliable wide receiver on this team. Again, this is why Kansas City wanted Justin Watson and kept him over ISM. What he brings is the known. He's not electric. He's not the best wide receiver, but you know what he is. You have to be this tall to ride. He just crests that number, right? He's just that tall to ride. And quite frankly, he's been pretty good this year. I mean, again, he's not Mike Evans or DeAndre Hopkins, but he is thrust into a role that's above him. And when he's done it, he's performed at a relatively high level. Now, you don't want him to be the wide receiver 1. And that game where he had 11 targets clearly was too much for him. But when you give him 5, 4, 3 targets a game, I'm 100% cool with that.
Yeah, and I ranked him here instead of lower because I'm considering not only positional value, but also draft capital and what your contract is. And I think Justin Watson is maybe one of two receivers that has actually exceeded his expectations since he's been in Kansas City. So you have to take that into consideration. Sky Moore, MVS, Kadarius Toney have definitely underwhelmed when it comes to what was sacrificed to get them on the roster. Number 20, offensive tackles, Jawan Taylor and Donovan Smith are tied here. You never want to see your tackles this low when you have a $500 million quarterback. Actually, more than that now. I guess I'd put it like this. They've been good enough to prevent a disaster, but disappointing.
You know, I was not high on Jawan Taylor when they got him. Not because of the skill set, but because of the money given to a right tackle. I've said this multiple times. I'll say it one more time quickly for those that do not know. Travis Kelce is more valuable than a lot of wide receivers. But you don't pay Travis Kelce like a wide receiver because the market doesn't dictate that. He's a tight end, right? You don't pay Jawan Taylor like a left tackle. I don't care that in today's NFL, right tackle, left tackle, both are important, both going up against the best of the best. I get that. But where's the market at? Market's not there yet. You don't want to be the team that resets that market. He's not Lane Johnson. Why are you giving him Lane Johnson money? It made no sense to me. He's a fine right tackle, an athletic right tackle. He's probably better, yes, than Andrew Wiley, but based on the cost analysis, is he? Based on the cost, is he more valuable than Andrew Wiley? Probably not. The penalties are there, and then you look on the left side, penalties are definitely there. The Chiefs decided to go with two of the most heavily penalized tackles in the NFL, thinking they would get fixed when they got here. We should have had more question marks ringing through our ears at that point because that wasn't going to be the case. Andy Reid has typically had a fairly heavily penalized team, so bringing in two heavily penalized tackles, what was the thought process there? I think they should be higher up, closer to 22, 23. They've been Jawan Taylor specifically here, have been a massive disappointment. Donovan Smith was a cheap deal. He's a stopgap. We know that. I don't have as big of an issue with him just based on the contract given.
Yeah, I'd use this analogy for Jawan Taylor. If you're buying the most expensive house on a street or in a neighborhood, you better be damn sure it's worth it, right? And I think there was just no need to kind of overpay what the market found Jawan Taylor worth. I guess they were just so desperate for tackle help that they wanted to be sure. And kind of, at least at the time, paying top of market worked with another lineman who we'll get to much later, but it did not seem to work here. Next up, this was a hard one for me to rank on the heels of at least a top 3 game for running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire. If you strip away the sunk cost, trademark Sterling, he's a serviceable backup, right? Is that the right way to classify him now? Like a good number 3 running back?
Yeah, I want to see a little bit more, but I think I'm there. And he's not the fastest guy. He's not the quickest guy or the strongest guy, but he's a solid pass catcher. He can do a little bit of everything. He's looked more explosive as he seemingly looks more, again, like Eddie Lacy. Like he's gotten a little bigger and somehow he looks better. He's more decisive, I think, is what it actually is. He's not bouncing around back there as much. He seemingly is finding his spot and running straight through it. I like seeing that. This time of year, obviously in December, flipping the calendar to January, a lot of tired bodies. Everyone's banged up. He looks fresh, and it's showing on the field. I'm a huge fan of, with Isaiah Pacheco coming back this week, still have a nice rotation between all 3 guys. I think Clyde's earned it. It keeps Pacheco fresh for the playoff run. And obviously McKinnon is, with his age and just previous track record, you're not going to give him and make him the bell cow. I like this 3-headed attack, and Clyde's part of it.
Yeah, I think he's kind of learned vision. I think that is a skill that can be acquired over time with experience. The other thing is, how banged up has he been during his era here in Kansas City? I think he's been pretty banged up now. I'm not a huge fan of his and where he was picked. Obviously, I always say this: you can be slow as a running back, you can be small as a running back. Being both is problematic, and to some extent, he is both. But I think he's plays his guts out, and he's kind of finding his lane very late in his contract.
No, I think you're right on there.
The next one, I'm going to get myself in hot water here. I can already feel it. Safety Justin Reed at 18. Hard hitter, very tough player, smart leader, but I think he's overrated against the run and struggles in coverage. Now, if you don't like PFF pass coverage grades or any PFF grades, he's 54.2 there, but I think the 101.9 passer rating allowed is more indicative of what's happening. And I think he gets picked on a little bit out there as a pass coverage safety. And I feel like he's also often a step late. And because he makes flash plays and he might be the hardest hitter on the team along with Nick Bolton, he's really endeared himself to fans. So he's a tough guy to criticize. And he also has a lot of intangibles, right? Because he's clearly Stanford guy, clearly one of the smartest players on the defense. And you have to give him some credit for the communication back there. But I think he's the weak link.
I think he's better than you think he is for some of, again, the intangibles. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if 18 is that much of a stretch at all. He does get picked on in pass coverage. He's not Tyrann Mathieu back there, but he's the complete opposite, right? The Chiefs wanted to get a more physical safety, no more business decisions, and so that's what they did. He sets the tone. Okay, he's a tone setter. Like if you think of the NBA terms, you had your enforcer. Justin Reed's an enforcer, right? You're like, why is he on the field? We have better shooting somewhere else. Yeah, but come on, you're trying to protect Michael Jordan here. You got Horace Grant over here. Come on now. Like Charles Oakley, for example. Justin Reed might be a little overpaid for a safety. I think safety personally is not a position where I give a ton of money to, but the Chiefs did because they were trying to, again, get more physical. And I think it's permeated throughout this team, the physicality that Justin Reed brings, the leadership that he brings. So again, yeah, some of the pass coverage numbers aren't great, but I think he does more than just what you see on the field.
Big shoes to fill with the Honey Badger. I know he made those business decisions, but in his first 2 years with the Chiefs, especially in coverage, he was playing at a Hall of Fame level, and he's been playing fantastic in New Orleans. I mean, I'm a huge Honey Badger guy, so I'm probably biased, but I just think it's a different type of player. And with the Honey Badger, you have more of like an Ed Reed, and Justin Reed is more like a Jamal Adams, a box safety. And I do think for a team that struggled to tackle, it did make a little bit of sense to bring in a sure tackler and a hard hitter, because that defense just really struggled in 21 to get people down to the ground.
Yeah, they're trying to go from a finesse type of team to a more physical type of team, and you got to make some concessions somewhere.
17. A guy I like a lot, but I just couldn't put him any higher because he's sort of having an average year, and that is Tommy Townsend. Fun player. Talk about big shoes to fill as a punter. I mean, who he's replacing in Dustin Colquitt. Very hard act to follow, if you will. But Tommy Townsend's been a solid punter. I don't know that this is his best season, but not a lot of shanks or anything.
No, and he's got great hair. 17 seems right.
He has commercial worthy hair there, right?
Golden, glorious locks.
And it's hard to evaluate a punter. I mean, like there aren't really any good stats to pull from. You just kind of watch over the season and get a feel for, is this guy, making more positive punts than negative ones. I will say last week he did pin the Patriots down basically on the, inside the 1 foot line, right?
Yeah, he has grown a ton from his rookie season to where he just had a big leg and it was a lot of touchbacks and it just didn't seem to have much control. He's grown a ton as a punter. I've been very impressed, but I do think this has not been his best year. Last year to me was so impressive.
And I think Phantom 1090 is right here. Disappointing year for Townsend. Need more coffin corner kicks. Yeah, I mean, he's done fine, but he is certainly more capable than what he's doing this season. Number 16, linebacker Leo Chanel. I've been impressed with him. He's stout against the run. He's an excellent pass rusher. We're seeing him be deployed more like that. I think Chiefs fans hoped for that because you look at his like relative athletic score, and the guy is an absolute freak and a really good pass rusher, I think. And he hasn't been as bad as you'd expect against the pass. I mean, thinking back to last year, he was a little bit of a disaster in coverage. I've been really impressed with him. What are your thoughts on Leo?
Yeah, he's getting involved more, especially as teams are running more 12 personnel against Kansas City. He's going to be forced to play more. The Chiefs don't like to run that base 4-3, but when you have 12 personnel on the offensive side, it kind of dictates that. So Leo's been playing more, and he's been pretty darn good. I would like to see him grow more in pass coverage, which I think we will see because, again, the athleticism is there. But he's become a really good rotational guy. Willie Gay Jr., as you mentioned, being a little down in pass coverage this season has thrown a wrench into things. But I have liked the growth of Leo. And as Angry Drunken German says, he's gone from raw project to reliable rotational guy. That's a great thing to have from him. I mean, that is a huge progression because you're right. He was a very raw project, and now they're finding great use for him.
Yeah, and the Chiefs have some very tough decisions in this offseason, not only contracts like MVS and Justin Reed, but Willie Gay, his contract's up. And having Leo Chanel probably makes you feel a little better about letting him walk. I know they're not the exact same player, but you don't want to leave the cupboard bare when it comes to that linebacker room. Number 15, another one of my guys. I know he's one of Sterling's guys too. I almost called you Stuart. I've never done that before. I don't know what the hell's going on, but my bad there. Jerick McKinnon.
Aaron.
Well, that's fair. That's fair. Jerick McKinnon, this old reliable, pass blocks his ass off, is elite in the red zone. Great hands, a real great interview, great in the locker room. Just can't say enough about this guy. He's a running back, right? A part-time running back, and he's missed a lot of the season. So, I don't know if missing a lot of the season is right. He's been kind of put on layaway, as we like to say. So I just couldn't get him any higher than 15.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, 15 is pretty darn high for a second/third string running back. Great arm, by the way, to throw the touchdown pass. Yeah, that counts as a throw, that little pop pass to Rashee Rice. Which, by the way, did you hear they've always ran that as a handoff, but he wanted to make sure Rashee got the touchdowns through the air and not on the ground. And so you know how, if that goes wrong, which it almost did, how pissed do you think Andy Reid would have been? That would have been an all-time ream from Andy to those two guys. But didn't happen. Touchdown happened. Everything's all good. But Jerick McKinnon, you're right. He's the little personal bodyguard to Patrick Mahomes. And he does see the field in the red zone like a quarterback. And that's what we've been asking. When we want players to be more Patrick friendly, right? Rashee Rice is getting there. It's the second play. It's, what do you see? Do you understand the soft spots? What do you see from the defense? The nuances. And Jerick McKinnon has that. And that's why he's been such a great threat once the Chiefs get into the red zone.
Yeah, you mentioned that decision to throw the ball instead of hand it off and Andy Reid. I often think about Travis Kelce and his lateral fetish. Going to give Andy Reid a heart attack. But I think the Chiefs' ability to improv is one of the things that, when they're at their best, makes them special, gives them some flair and some confidence. So you don't want to take that away from them. Man, I'm out of order here. What am I doing?
Yeah, I was wondering that on the show sheet. Yeah, we have a show sheet, guys. Come on. This is not just all off the cranium, all off the top of the dome.
We're just going to make these two guys tied.
You went 15, 12, 14, 13, which now as a non-mathematician, a little confused by, but I don't know.
Yeah, there was a lot of moving parts on this advent calendar, but let's just do this. At number 14, they're very close. Let's have a tie between Mike Dana and Charles Omenihu, both edges.
Oh, bleep you, dude. Oh, bleep you. Mike Dana's been more valuable than Charles O this season. Oh, bleep you.
You got to
No. Okay, Taylor Swift. I'm Kanye. You were great and all, but I'm not letting you finish.
I'm going to let you finish.
Because no, you're not putting them. Mike Dana, perpetually the unsung hero of this team. I don't know why I did a little Danny Tommy DeVito over here going on. You're not doing that to me. I get riled up when you don't give Mike Dana the credit he deserves.
He's pretty high on this list. And I think the argument for Omenihu, who isn't even the highest edge on this list, is he has the highest pass rush win rate of the group. And that's both regular and true pass sets.
How many games? Come on now.
I docked him for suspension. That's why he's rated.
Put him 3 or something? Come on. Best?
He is our most talented edge. I think that's a fact. And I think Mike Dana is terrific. He gives us all every single play. He's stout against the run, but he's not as talented as Omenihu, and he's not as productive as Karlaftis. If we're looking at things like
as Karlaftis, but come on now. Kadarius Toney is more talented than Justin Watson, but who's been better this year?
Well, Omenihu's been pretty good when he plays. I mean, he's been
pretty good. I know. That's maybe a bad comp, but the point is, I think Mike Dana, because of where he was drafted, because he doesn't shine, because he's just a good old motor guy, bring your lunch pail to work, he never gets the credit he deserves. All he does is produce solid numbers. Again, we're not talking Myles Garrett, but he's been so good as a fifth rounder, and I was so wrong on him. Like, I was so confused when the Chiefs drafted him. Like, this guy, I see what they see in him. He does everything that is asked and more. He is the glue. He's a necessity. Mike Dana has got to be, in my opinion, above Charles O. Sorry about it.
Well, I think the best case you can make here is based on expectations. Omenihu does have, I thought he was a good value as a free agent, but his contract is no doubt much bigger than Mike Dana's. So I think that is a pretty decent argument. Let's finish up the edges here at 13 with George Karlaftis. Now we're all out of whack now. That's going to be number 12, George Karlaftis. And again, not the most flashy guy, but extremely dependable. And he's having a very solid season. He's showing up for the Chiefs. He's kind of shored up that rotation. I've been impressed. He looks a little faster this year too. Haven't you seen a little bit of improved athleticism? I know that's hard to do, but...
Well, yeah, because who would have thought that a 21-year-old drafted guy who was young and fairly inexperienced coming from Greece, who was still learning the game, who would have thought he would have a little bit more upside? I never understood that. Why was Boye Mafa all of a sudden this untapped potential, and yet Karlaftis is the younger guy who's coming from Greece? All of a sudden, he's a finished product. I get it. I get what you're saying. You're saying more athleticism-wise. I'm with you. But this is also, he's getting older. He's understanding the game, the pace, the flow. He's learning, man. You know me. Huge Karlaftis guy. I loved him before he was drafted to Kansas City. I thought it made a lot of sense because he was a day one ready guy. He's young. You saw the upside, the strength, the motor. Man, 12 for Karlaftis is just about right, but I'm a huge Karlaftis guy.
This was a tough group to evaluate because you have Omenihu, who's very talented, flashes, is super disruptive when you put him inside. And I feel like he wins early, which is the big difference between him and the two other guys. But Karlaftis and Dana are extremely dependable, reliable, down in, down out. They're consistent. They are just solid in every possible way. So I think we lean Karlaftis here because of production, right? He's had the best production. He's been there every game. He gets a nod. 11. Now, this was a tough one for me, but Trey Smith, I think it's a little bit of a down year, as evidenced by some struggles last week with Christian Barmore, right? The stud defensive tackle for the Patriots that a lot of guards, frankly, would struggle with. But he's still been an essential cog in what I consider to be the league's best interior O-line. And there's been more positive than negative with Trey Smith. Speaking of that interior O-line, what a beautiful sight it was to see those three guys pull as a convoy. And they were like running 25, 30, 35 yards down field in unison with Clyde Edwards-Helaire right behind them. It was amazing, right?
Oh, no one wanted to get in front of that. No defender is like, oh yeah, look at 900 pounds of dudes running towards me. No, that was miserable. Full steam ahead. On that play specifically too, Trey Smith, if he would have got that guy, Clyde probably would have had a touchdown. He just didn't see him. I think actually Trey Smith, I would move him closer to 13, 14. I'd have Dana and Karlaftis above him. I think he's had frankly, a down year, which is too bad. You're right. There's been a lot of good too, but there's been too much bad in my opinion. The penalties have seemingly started to rise. I don't know if it's because folks are zoning in on what Donovan Smith and Juwan Taylor are doing. That could be the case. But I think all things considered, he's had a down year, at least based on my expectations for him.
I think the penalties are exactly that. You play next to Juwan Taylor, who is both a marked man and can't seem to get his shit together when it comes to false starts. There's going to be more scrutiny. You're going to be under more scrutiny as Trey Smith. There's our doodle buddy. I don't know. I've got one too, but I don't know if she is. And Trey Smith is a fan favorite, so you can never go wrong ranking him highly. Let's move on to number 10. And that's another tie. Linebackers Nick Bolton and Drew Tranquil. I had a hard time picking, especially with Bolton missing games. He's a rock against the run. He's the leader of the D, and he keeps improving in coverage. Then you have Tranquil, who is excellent in pass coverage generally, and he's an elite blitzer. I mean, that guy can blitz his ass off. 17 pressures and a PFF pass rush grade of 85. Spags loves sending him. I think this year his favorite blitzers, his blitzers of choice are Tranquil and McDuffie, it seems like.
Yeah, you're right, man. And that's got to be a nightmare for offenses to try and pick up.
Definitely.
I think you're right here, though. I would say it's a tie as well. Even from a Mizzou guy who loves Nick Bolton, Drew Tranquil has been phenomenal in all facets. He's gotten better. He's not Nick Bolton stopping the run, but he's gotten better. He looks to be a little heavier than he has been in the past, maybe a little bit more physical. But yeah, man, he's so good as a weapon because the versatility is second to none.
Your ability to keep that thought going as your dog was like trying to lick your face and all that was like Mahomes in the pocket, just not going to be brought down, not going to be sacked. You're getting the playoff no matter what, right?
Defenders all around me, hands to the face by the dog, didn't matter. Yeah, I don't know why. For some reason, it's only during this show, Tuesday show, he's like, nah, man, I'm asleep. Wednesday show with Best, good old Bailey boy is like, oh yeah. Let's bleep and party, dude.
Well, it's a he?
It's a he, yeah.
Well, I have a girl dog who's also a doodle. I mean, maybe that's the thing. Maybe there's an attraction there or something.
Yeah.
We have to play matchmaker.
I like you said girl dog is like girl dad. I like that about you, Best. I like that.
Number 9, kicker Harrison Butker. He's been fantastic, especially coming off a year last year where kind of oddly, a lot of Chiefs fans wanted him gone. And really the problem was that ankle that he hurt in that Cardinals game. It took him a while to get right. I think by the end of the season and in the playoffs, he obviously was right, but you have him making 34 of 34 extra points and 25 out of 26 field goals. It's just hard to do better than that. But this is as high as I can place a kicker on a playoff team.
Yeah, I would have gone higher, closer probably to 5, 6. Butker's been nails, man. He is such a weapon. And I talk about, because I do a weekly chat with Nick Lowry former Chiefs Hall of Fame kicker. And, we talk about Butker all the time, and we talked last year how it's the injury and not just physical. There's a mental side of things. You have to eventually learn how to trust that ankle yet again, because Lowry had a similar situation happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have the surgery and the construction, and all of a sudden you got to learn how to trust it, and at times even redo what you're used to doing because it feels different. And we talked actually about his one miss against New England. He said part of it's the field. Because I noticed, how he kept going to one knee like he's Adrian Beltre? Like, Adrian Beltre, the third baseman, used to always go to one knee sometimes when he was hitting balls. Butker did it a few times in that game, and I was wondering why. He goes, it's because it's turf and not grass. It's a different feel. You don't have the same kicking motion, like the same plant. It's not as natural. And that's why he thinks he missed the first one, especially pushed it outright, because it was a good kick as far as it wasn't hooked, it wasn't snapped, it wasn't sliced. It was pure, just out to the right, because you couldn't get your foot through. And that's why he learned, and that 54-yarder was nails. So that was a little interesting kicker knowledge that I learned from Nick, and I thought was very interesting.
It's a thought I've never mulled over before, is getting a kickoff early in a game under pressure. So in that live environment, a kicker can kind of get a feel for the field, because you're right. Different fields have different grip, and let's hope that he got his miss out in the regular season, so he'll continue to be ice cold in a good way in the playoffs. Number 8, running back Isaiah Pacheco. I think he's been good everywhere. We've seen the evolution of his game from a guy that was just kind of a hard-nosed runner to now he's making some guys miss. He's got good hands. His pass protection has improved leaps and bounds. He's 15th in rushing yards over expected. And there's a whole host of stats where if you look at running backs, I mean, he's in the top 15, if not top 12 in almost every category. And he's been a quasi bell cow, with Jerick McKinnon kind of being held out due to his age, load management situation.
Yeah, he's been really good. I think sometimes some of the extremely explosive plays might be lacking with him, but
Yeah.
that's okay. I mean, again, you're a 7th round, running back. It's okay. The physicality is what he brings to the table. But yeah, I'm with Phantom here, and some of those comments. Just the physicality he delivers, especially with that banged up shoulder already, makes me nervous. He's an older running back as far as I know, not how long he's been in the NFL, but as far as his age compared to how long he's been in the NFL, you never want to say a guy's injury prone or how long does he have, but with that running style, you don't see many dudes last a long time. I hope he finds a way to lessen those blows, because maybe instead of getting that extra yard, go out of bounds, save yourself, because he is a very talented running back. And we love seeing those hits, but at times, is it really worth it? You hit the exact same shoulder you had labrum surgery on. You got to clean up some floaters. Now you're back this week. I was talking to Tim Grunard about it. He said was it bursitis was what he heard from the organization. He goes, Joe Montana had it on his elbow. And so it's very, very painful. But a lot of times, it's stuff you deal with for an extended period of time. You have to continuously get that drained. Now, hopefully he will not have to do that, but just something to monitor going forward of how healthy that shoulder will be, not just for the Raiders, but against the season as it goes on and into next year.
Yeah, I would like to see him run into contact a little less. There's no need for him to be Gus Edwards. He's one of the faster running backs in the league. He had the best 40 time in his class. Now, I think you're right. He's not as explosive as some of the guys that were picked earlier than him in his draft class, like Breece Hall, like James Cook, like Rachaad White, those guys that can catch a pass and house it. That's not really in his repertoire, but he brings a lot to the table, and he can kind of grind down a defense in a way I don't think those other guys can. I mean, when it is this time of year and it's frigid out there on the field, he is not a guy you want to tackle in the fourth quarter. I think that matters in the playoffs, having a punisher out there.
Yeah, it's a mini Derrick Henry.
Mini Derrick Henry. I like that. Number 7, another one of my guys. He really has, I would say he's literally saving the Chiefs season with the way he stepped up. And that is wide receiver Rashee Rice. He is 13th in target rate. He is 11th in yards per route run, 3rd in yak, and 2nd in yak per catch, only behind Deebo Samuel. And in overall yards after the catch, he's only behind Jamar Chase and Tyreek Hill. So elite company there. Just can't sing his praises enough. We're seeing some big boy routes out of him too. Some stuff more downfield, some over the shoulder stuff. We're just seeing him slowly develop into more of an all around receiver. And what I liked last week is we saw him kind of sit down in the middle of the field, and where some of these other wide receivers get antsy, there was a hole in the coverage there. And even though Mahomes was running around, he just sat down, showed some patience, showed some willpower, and became the zone buster that Mahomes needed on that play. I think that's the guy that Mahomes needs. He has earned his quarterback's trust as a quarterback-friendly receiver. I could just go on and on and on about Rice, because in light of these other guys just being massive disappointments, he's stepped up.
Yeah, he played 92% of snaps last week, which you love to see. He's still learning on the fly, as we've seen in games. It was the previous game, not against the Patriots, but when he caught the touchdown, he had a similar one in the end zone where he flattened his route out too much. Right, he didn't give Mahomes a great angle, and then what happened the second time around? He gave Mahomes an angle, and it was a touchdown. He's learning in game as well, and he's been forced to, because MVS, Justin Watson, to an extent, your veterans, Kadarius Toney, guys you counted on, have not been able to step up. So if they're not stepping up, throw at this guy who's more talented, but maybe doesn't know the playbook quite as well, the nuances, and he's found ways to get it done. I would be hard pressed to understand even the debacle this wide receiver room would be in without Rashee Rice. I mean, seriously, think of that. This would be beyond atrocious. Rashee Rice has been everything and more. Quite frankly, I did not think he would be this good this early. And the fact he's playing more on the outside actually is going to bring more dividends for Kansas City, because that would allow Sky Moore to go back to his natural position. Again, not this year, obviously, as he's placed on the IR, but Sky Moore is not horrendous in the slot. He's just horrendous when he tries to play on the outside in the X.
Yeah, and you still want to get him in there and get his reps at power slot, but you really want to see him be a guy that can move outside and beat man as well. The biggest knock on him this year is his average depth of target. It's very low at 4.8. I think that's a byproduct of him playing in the slot, and also the coaches kind of keeping the training wheels on for much of the season. A lot of screens, a lot of ways to get the ball in his hands and get him in space. But also, MVS and Justin Watson are running all the downfield routes. There are no downfield routes available. And I would expect that to change next year. But we might need to recalibrate expectations. I've always thought he's a power slot. I've always thought he's more, say...
You were on that, dude. You nailed that one.
I think he's more Amon-Ra St. Brown than he is Mike Evans. And that's okay. He doesn't need to be a contested catch merchant to win in the 2020s. We see a lot of guys with his utilization. I mean, Cooper Kupp, I'm not saying he's Cooper Kupp yet, but that's how Cooper Kupp wins. Cooper Kupp isn't catching, 60-yard bombs. He is getting open in space at will and racking up yak. We could wax poetic about Rashee Rice saving this team in this room all day. We won't. Number 6, center Creed Humphrey. Very minor down year for him, but I think he's still dominating for the most part, especially in the passing game. And that's what matters to the Chiefs most. This is still, the Chiefs are running better, seem to be running a bit more. This is still very much Patrick Mahomes' team. He has an elite ESPN pass block win rate. There's not much to say here. He's a rock.
Yeah, again, when you say down year, it's the same thing for Mahomes. Still incredible. Still top 3, top 2, and maybe even 1. Creed Humphrey, as you mentioned, is a rock. That is the best way to put it. Man, I was a little concerned when you draft a center in the second round. I'm like, if you draft a center in the second round, that guy better be a Pro Bowler. Well, he's better than a Pro Bowler. He's an all pro type of guy. Man, Creed Humphrey is just so impressive.
And I've come to an understanding with that draft pick, as well as picking Bolton in the second round. You do that so you don't have to pay a center the kind of contract that who's the guy that went out to the Chargers that they threw like $20 million a year to?
Was it Corey Linsley?
Right. And then you have Fred Warner out in San Francisco. Now, Fred Warner's probably worth it, but most middle linebackers you don't want to give that kind of cash to. Anthony Hitchens was overpaid. I think the Chiefs didn't want to make that mistake again. So drafting non-premium positions in the second round to keep kind of the cost for those rooms down or that position down, that seems like a viable strategy at this point.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Number 5 is a tie. Wanted to get these guys higher, but this is as high as I could get them. Corners, L'Jarius Sneed and Trent McDuffie. For my money, the best corner duo in football this season. And they hold opposing wide receiver ones to a league low 50 yards per game. So that's just not us being homers. There is actual statistical evidence that they're getting it done. They are locking down elite receivers like Justin Jefferson, like Tyreek Hill, like A.J. Brown. I think A.J. Brown had like 1 catch for 8 yards. That's insane. So
I'd go higher. I would put him at 2. I mean, seriously, because what they have done, they've been, in my opinion, I think they've been more valuable than Chris Jones. In my opinion, they've been more valuable than even probably Travis Kelce. The only person I think is probably Patrick Mahomes. L'Jarius Sneed and Trent McDuffie have been that good. We have not seen a cornerback tandem play like this. I mean, Brandon Flowers and Brandon Carr were great, obviously, but they weren't like this. This is unbelievable. I have never seen a tandem like this that I can remember. Again, I'm young here, 29 in Chiefs history. Phenomenal.
For me, it reminds me of like prime peak James Hasty and Dale Carter. And I loved that duo. And this is definitely the best duo we've had since them. And honestly, they have the potential to exceed that duo. At this point, you have to bring L'Jarius Sneed back. I just think it's a no-brainer. I was a little bit worried about the knee coming in. And
well, you know, Best, that's why you don't give 20 mil per year to a right tackle. You now, folks now understand my concern.
or it's going to be 15 million to a strong safety next year. I mean, yeah. Positional value, guys. I have a surprise for you at number 2. We will get to that in a second. First off, number 4, defensive tackle Chris Jones. This is kind of becoming a trend. Another guy that's still dominant, still excellent, still a cornerstone type player, but his numbers are down a little bit. And you have to wonder if that's because he missed some time. He's 4th among defensive tackles in pressure, 2nd in sacks, not quite having that Aaron Donald-esque season that he had last year.
Yeah, he seemingly is getting doubled and tripled more. I haven't had the stats. I haven't looked them up to back this claim up. I apologize. But it feels like when I'm watching games, defenses are really focused on making sure he is not the guy that beats him. So that's why you have seen a lot more one-on-ones for Mike Dana and Karl Loftus and Charles Omenihu. And that's why you've seen the sack numbers for Dana and obviously Karl Loftus, in my opinion, they've gone up. It's because they're getting these one-on-ones. Chris Jones is allowing that to happen. So again, he's impacting the game in a different way. You'd still like to see him split those double teams potentially a little bit more than you have seen so far. I don't think the time off at this point of the season has been a hindrance to him. I don't. This point of the season, he's fully engaged, right? But
he still has those stretches too. I thought last game there was like a 3-play stretch where he kind of wrecked the Patriots offense.
He did.
And forced a punt. And he's still capable of just showing up on that level and short circuiting an offense. I think we just need to see a little bit more of it if the Chiefs want to get back to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, or if he wants that money. If you want Aaron Donald money, we don't care if you're getting double teamed. You got to still make it happen.
Right. Number 3, tight end Travis Kelce. This hurt me. This hurt me to put him at 3. Still great, but year over year, yards after the catch is down almost a yard. His contested catch rate, this surprised me. It's down to 15%. I think he's lost some juice. He visibly looks slower. He looks like he's in pain out there. You see him on the sidelines. He doesn't look like he's as boisterous, like he's enjoying himself as much. He looks just banged up and like he's kind of just, it's grit at this point. He's kind of just working his way through it. And the explosive plays, they're more rare. Now, he's still as good as any tight end in the league. And a lot of that is just a ridiculous feel for the game and a lot of know-how. But I think we're starting to see him slow down little by little.
Yeah, I mean, he's still the best tight end in football, which is absolutely crazy. We're talking about a down year, and he's still the best tight end in football, still on pace to go over a K. I'm with you. He does look a little tired. Maybe not as much fun is being had by him, but I don't know if anyone's having a lot of fun in the wide receiver room right now, or the pass catchers room, if you will, if you're going to include the tight ends here. So I think that's a part of it, right? When all these guys are struggling to catch the rock, I think it brings everyone down. He's getting older, man. Father time comes for everyone. He's still very, very effective. I still think he's a couple years left in the tank. Maybe you don't see him go for 1,300 yards. Maybe you see him go for 1,100. That's still perfectly viable as a tight end in the NFL.
I think what's happened is there used to be a massive gap between him as number 1 and the number 2 tight end, which has been a whole list of guys. Mark Andrews, Darren Waller, George Kittle. He was way ahead of that pack. But I think some of these young bucks, like TJ Hawkinson, Sam Laporta, Kittle's having a good year. Maybe the gap has closed a little bit. I still think he's the best. Man, I would really like to have a bye just to get him a week off, because in the past, we've said this before, it looks like Travis Kelce is slowing down. And what happened is the guy was beat up. And he's such a warrior. He's so tough that he's not going to miss games. He's not going to complain about it, but he will struggle through it a little bit. I would like to see him get an extra week off. Doesn't look like that's going to happen.
No, it would be nice, because ever since OTAs, training camp, preseason, he's been perpetually banged up, it feels like. Love this, though, from Oregon Fishing before I move on. Says, Kelce is still hurting and is getting mauled every game. If there haven't been so many issues in the wide receiver room, he would be fine. Yeah, I mean, when no one else is stepping up, teams are going, all right, we'll play one guy very physical with him in the line of scrimmage and then bracket him with a guy over the top. So he's not getting open, he's not getting the ball, and you're getting beat up every single play. That will take a toll on you.
What I would compare it to, and there's only one other player that I think has received this treatment. That's Rob Gronkowski. I would compare it to Hack-a-Shack.
Yeah.
Referees and officials let defenders get away with an extra level of physicality with Travis Kelce that other players, would get calls. But the mugging of him is so constant that I think it's been normalized, and they let defenders get away with it. It's kind of a bummer, actually. And that flop was bad, though. I have to throw that out there.
Yeah, that was a nice little LeBron James flop he pulled out right there.
That was a Vlade Divac special. That's a little bit before
I'm your Vlade, baby. Don't you question me on my early 2000s Sacramento Kings knowledge with Chris Webber and Jason Williams and Doug Christie and Vlade Divac. Okay, and Peja Stojakovic. Come on now. There's your starting 5 for you.
That team was a lot of fun. My favorite thing about Vlade Divac is allegedly he never quit smoking, which is just amazing to be an NBA player playing 82 games a year, running up and down the court, needing to be in cardiovascular shape and still smoking. Number 2, are you ready for what's essentially the Christmas Eve of our list, of our Arrowhead Addict Advent calendar?
Oh, yeah.
Offensive guard Joe Tooney.
Yeah, you're wrong, but it's fine.
I'm not wrong. I'm not wrong because
You're telling.
unlike Chris Jones, unlike Travis Kelce, and probably even unlike Trent McDuffie and L'Jarius Sneed, he's the best guard in football. He's first among guards in PFF pass blocking grade and ESPN pass block win rate. And I think in a pass happy league, he's the most valuable guard in football. That's why I have him number 2. He's the guy that has the claim to be at the top of his position, along with obviously who's going to be our number 1. And that's why I gave him the nod here.
I would go with L'Jarius and Trent personally. I'd probably put Travis and Chris as well. Joe Tooney's been the most valuable offensive lineman for Kansas City. I would put him over Creed Humphrey. I'll give you that one. He's been so good, man. You're right. The Iron Man aspect, the consistent nature, game in and game out what you are going to get. And by the way, again, I wonder how hard that is on him. You go from Donovan Smith to now Wanye Morris, a rookie. Hasn't skipped a beat, hasn't mattered. Joe Tooney, you're right. He's been the best offensive lineman for Kansas City this season. Again, I'm not putting him above Trent or L'Jarius, but I'm not going to argue with you too much.
And he's the reason they can moneyball left tackle. He gives them so much confidence in having an anchor next to whether it's Donovan or Wanye or whoever, Orlando Brown Jr. in the past. They feel much more secure having him out there. And people joke around about him being an android or a friendly Terminator or whatever, because the man does not make mistakes. And one of the reasons I put him on number 2 is maybe it's because he doesn't have as big of a personality as Creed and Trey Smith, but this guy is criminally underrated by the fan base. I don't see Tooney jerseys. I don't see people talking about him on social media, but he is one of the most important players on this roster. He has been so incredible. One of the best free agent signings in franchise history at this point.
Yeah. No, I will not argue. We need some Tooney shirts. Gotta have it.
Yeah, we need something. I don't know what we can work up there, but I would love to see that.
Looney Tooney. Looney Tunes.
Looney Tooney. There we go. I love it. Number 1, our Christmas day on this list. It's not going to surprise anybody. It is quarterback Patrick Mahomes.
Oh, sorry. That was Blaine Gabbert.
Close call. I really thought about it at the end. Just at the last instant, I went with Mahomes. And it seems on the surface like Mahomes is having a down year. I don't think that's really the truth, because what it is mainly is his receiving room has just been sandbagging him. But he's still 5th in EPA per play. He's 1st in DVOA, and that's defense adjusted value over average, added via scrambling. He's been a more efficient scrambler than, and more effective too, than Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, anybody, by a pretty comfortable margin. And that is a part of his game that just isn't discussed enough by really anybody outside of Kansas City. And really, if you think about it, with no obvious MVP, the Chiefs are like 3 huge drops away from being 12-2, and him being the freaking front runner in this thing.
Yeah, I was about to say, I wonder how we would be viewing Mahomes this season if a couple of those drops have not happened, especially in clutch moments. It does seem like, to his standards, he's having a little bit of a down year. But when you are Patrick Mahomes and you're held to those Mahomesian standards, it's tough to eclipse that year after year after year. If this is considered a down year for Mahomes, sign me the hell up, because you're right. He has still been incredible. A lot of it does come down to the drops, and you can never take that back. And there needs to be a stat for interceptions that are not your fault, because Kadarius Toney would be taking at least 2 of those away. Blake Bell, bad throw, shouldn't have thrown it, but Blake Bell got the ball ripped away from him like it was me going up against Sauce Gardner. Like, come on, man. You're a tight end. You're like 6'3".
Yeah, I don't need to see Blake Bell again running routes. He can go out there and block, 13 personnel a little bit. But if you're going to get boxed out by a defensive back and you're this huge tight end, you have no usefulness as a receiver. So I just think when we look back on the season, especially if he can get it going in the playoffs, and we're due some positive regression on some of these drops. I know these guys are who they are, but this would be almost a historic rate if it continued. So I expect things, especially with Rashee Rice stepping up, I expect things to even out a little bit. And then we know what happens in the playoffs. Patrick plays, he kind of throws caution into the wind and scrambles even more. I think he's going to be a scrambling fool in the playoffs, just running for his life and trying to make things happen with his legs.
Over his dead body.
We're gonna see that. We're gonna see that, and we're also gonna see, probably not for sure, but road Patrick Mahomes. And I kind of like the idea of that. I want him to get a little bit of a chip back on his shoulder, playing the underdog. A weird place to be for the Chiefs, but I kind of dig it a little bit. Well, guys, that is all we have for you on this special Christmas edition of Wacky Wednesday. First off, big props to the chat. We appreciate you. Before you roll out, do us a favor and mash that like button. That really helps us out. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, what are you doing? That is your Christmas present from you to us. Please subscribe. We're really growing fast, and we want to grow faster. If you're an audio listener, either on Apple or Spotify, please consider dropping us a 5-star rating. That helps us reach a larger audience. We will be back next Wednesday. I think I will be back next Wednesday. Sterling, you're on holiday, correct?
Yeah, I think I forget what I have, but yeah, I'm gone next Wednesday. Out.
Enjoy that, brother. The two of us will be back 2 weeks from now at 4:30 p.m. Central. I will be here next week at that time, right here on the Arrowhead Addict channel. Until then, Merry Christmas and go Chiefs.